This beautiful villa was built in the 1820s, which means that it's over 200 years old. And most of what we see today is still original. The beautiful entryway is like a grand gesture that makes you really want to come inside, and the stairs up really elevate the experience. And you can see that the wooden doors, which have been painted green, are consistent throughout the whole design. Today we're going to look at the beautiful high fidelity studio of Dimi Vesos.
Hey, my name is Dimi Vesos and I have a YouTube channel all about hi-fi and electronics, and yeah, I'd like to welcome you. Feel free.
Thank you very much.
Take a look.
This is the office. The design was kept very minimalistic so that you don't pull any of the attention from the original heritage of this beautiful house and villa. The walls are all painted in white, as are the window frames here. You can see them. And you have really beautiful gold details, such as the doorknobs or the window knobs. And my favorite thing already now in this villa is the original paintings from the 1920s in the ceiling. Yeah, it was painted over 200 years ago, and it's really beautiful. And to keep the same atmosphere of this room, the designer decided to add a vintage lamp. The floral elements in the ceiling also really draw a connection to the outside, because the outside we're living right next to a park, so you really have this connection to the local space. The furniture adds a pop of color, which I think is really beautiful. So you have this dark green, deep intense velvet sofa chairs that really correspond with the ceiling and the floral patterns on the top. And the really cool acrylic table really doesn't give the room too much depth, so that everything really still feels really bright and airy. And same thing goes for the really high ceilings. So you really feel like you have a lot of space to breathe and to let your mind wander. And I think it's really beautiful. And you can also see that the zoning of the room is really created through the carpet. Because of the carpet, you feel like this is one area of this room and the rest of the room feels like another type of area. Let's go inside the main studio. So this part of the studio is really just for listening to the music and embracing the music and testing out different types of high fidelity speakers. And I think you can see that this room is really just embraces the personality of Dimi and of the studio. You really have a lot of really cool connections to the music, and they are like supported through the design. So if we go back to the way that this room is, you see again that everything is really white and minimalistic. And the beautiful wooden floor is actually original and is more than 200 years old. And that's really cool, I think. The room is filled with different types of speakers. And even though there are a lot of things in the room, and you could think that it's overwhelming at first, you see that the color palette is quite natural. You have the white, the browns, and also the blacks, and it adds a cohesion, even though there's so many things standing in the room. And one thing I really love is that the room is also very symmetrically built. I think one of the reasons is because also speakers always need to be symmetrically on each sides, but it really gives the space a lot of harmony, and I really like it. And here you have the design, and the decoration goes beyond and tells the story from the beginning to the finish. So you don't just have the act of listening to the music, but you also have a lot of different artists, musical artists, different posters, some musical instruments, a saxophone. You can really see that the studio tells the whole entire story, from producing music up to listening to it. And I think that is really beautiful. And one thing I learned, which I really like about this room as well, is because it's such an old building, the acoustics are really bad. And to save this, because this room is supposed to be for listening to music, the really cool acoustic panels were installed in the ceiling that are actually disguised as a lighting system. So you don't feel like you have these big, typical traditional acoustic panels which don't look that nice, but instead you have just really cool ambient light. And I really like it. Of course, because this is such an old apartment, you always have really big, beautiful windows. And you can see that there's 3 of them, and they really structure the room and give it also a sort of a rhythm. Another perk of having such high ceilings is the fact that you can pull the door frames all the way to the top. And this really creates a cohesion, repetition throughout the rooms and makes them feel connected to each other, even though you can just close the doors and they become separate rooms. So if you go through here, The different spaces of the apartment really just flow from one space into the next, and this really creates a really nice harmony and makes you feel like this is just one really big space that flows into each other. And the doors are actually also, we think that they are also date all the way back to when this house was built, and they were just restored a little bit. So that's really cool. Here we come into the kitchen. Because this is a studio, this is not a fully equipped kitchen, but it's just a place where you can relax, have a coffee, have a cup of tea, maybe eat or drink something. And even here, we can see the really cool merch of the studio, which I think is quite cool. And now we will go into the last room, which really is the gem of this apartment. And I think when you see it, you will know why. I think when you enter this room, you really just transported back all the way 200 years back to when this apartment was built, because all of the elements in this room really reflect this time. On the one hand, of course, we have the original beautiful marble fireplace, which is just incredible. I think it's really, really cool. On the other hand, all of the furniture that was used really supports the story and the history of the place. So you really feel connected to that old time. All of the furniture that we see here is vintage, and that's really cool, and secondhand. So every single piece, such as this dark green velvet armchair, has had a history before it came here. And I think it adds even more value to this design. This is another room for listening to music. Before we already had a little listening session, and it sounds really cool. The color palette in this room is a little bit more pared down and toned down than in the rest of the apartment, which is airy and bright, so that you can relax here, because this is really a place for relaxation. And the tones that were chosen are really dark, rich colors, such as this dark green velvet sofa, or really dark and heavy dark red curtains. And you can really feel the weight of everything that is inside here. It really tells a coherent design story. Once again, we can see that the entire setup of this room is more or less symmetric, and it really balances out the room. On the one hand, we have the beautiful fireplace. On the other hand, we have a nice and big shelf that balances out the room. And as you know, every room needs a focal point and a place where if you enter the room, your eye instantly draws on it, and it really is like the center of the room. And here, without a doubt, it's the beautiful setup. And it's just really cool. And you can see just the importance that it has in this room and in this whole design, because it basically takes up half the room, and there's a lot of space behind, there's a lot of space on both sides, and you really see that this is the reason why you're supposed to be in this room, to relax and to listen to some music. One more cool thing that we have in this apartment is the terrace outside. Ah, squirrel! Yeah. This beautiful terrace is yet another place where you are just thrown back 200 years ago, where you can imagine just running around with your family, eating breakfast. I think it's really beautiful. It really gives you the feeling that you're living in an antique and grand villa in the center of Hamburg. Behind me we have a beautiful park, so we're really perfectly connected. On the one hand, you can go to the park. On the other hand, on the other side, you can see the Elbe, which is the biggest river in Hamburg, and it's very cool. I'm Jane, and today we're going to have a look at a beautiful guest house in one of the most beautiful neighborhoods in Hamburg. The guest house is in a villa that dates back to the 19th century, to the 1820s. And the lower part of this villa used to be the laundry room. And the real beauty of this apartment is the kitchen and the living room. It used to be the laundry room of this big villa more than 200 years ago, but today it has been transformed into a kitchen. This entry really divides the two places from each other. Here we also have a wooden farmer's table accompanied by a wooden chair, and very basic but kind of like country vibe. And you can really see that this really also dates back to its old history, and that while you're here you really have the feeling that you are living not now but really rather 200 years back, but with the comfort and luxury of the modern times. And the coolest thing about this apartment is, without a doubt, these cool sinks. This is the reason why we suspect that this used to be a laundry room, because they are still original. And for the originality and authenticity of this apartment, they are still here and rather act today as decoration where green plants bloom. I think it's really cool. And you really see all of the old details. And this also is an original. This separates the apartment from the rest of the building. And they are original doors, and you can see that they are in this original fabric style. And they were painted blue to go with the rest of the design. The overall color palette is very simple and minimalistic, and I think that there wasn't added a lot to it to give it really this original rustic farm style. So you really have just the white and different shades of blue, but because everything has such a rich history and such a rich patina, it doesn't feel boring, but you can get lost in any detail really, because every single tile is unique. And also the floor is really, really beautiful. I love it. I hope one day I have the same. You just have white and bluish, grayish tiles that make up a really cool pattern and that really ground the space. Here is a new kitchen. It is fully functional and beautiful. And you can see that this teal greenish color was pulled from the antique tiles. Here we have another really cool element that pulls you back into the 18th century from when this building was built. A farmer's woman who was making some bread and making some milk, and it's really cool. And you can see, for example, here, we can see all of the old details, and that just makes it look really antique and very, very cool. Also, all of the decoration that we have in this guest house really adds to the story. So you have a cohesive story that is from the design that is told throughout every single detail, and this is what makes the design feel so coherent and makes you really feel like you're living in the space. For example, these beautiful glass vases that look a little bit vintage, or the beautiful flowers, the wooden cutting boards. All of these elements, like I said, add to the story and give it more depth. The black door and the black wooden door frames are an original, and they really separate the antique original part from the newly renovated ones. And you really have this balance between these two spaces, because here everything is original. The tiles on the floor are old, more than 200 years old, as well as the tiles on the walls. And that is why they have sometimes a slight change in color, or they're a little bit broken. While in the bedroom, you have all the comfort and luxury of a modern house that has been fully renovated, because here, for example, you have a floor heating system so that you are warm at night. So you really have the best of both worlds. This apartment only has one bedroom, and it's kept quite minimalistic with a lot of white walls, and it really acts as a place of serenity so that you can enjoy the neighborhood and the trees and the birds. Here we have more of a modern design and more of a minimalistic look, but you still have all of these details of the farm vibe that date back to the 18th century, such as these wooden straw baskets, or you have a lot of neutral and natural materials, and you still have the luxury of a modern apartment. And what's really beautiful and what really maximizes the small space that we have in this apartment is the fact that the door frames are always from head to toe all the way to the top. So you don't have the feeling like you're going through a small door, but you feel like it feels really like a grand entry. And it is equipped with a very nice bathroom. The bathroom is very functional. You have two very nice sinks accompanied by two beautiful mirrors. Hi guys! We are standing in an old, historic, tiny chalet in the center of Hamburg. If you love historic buildings and just this really ancient charm, this video is for you. If you like the video, make sure to subscribe. So, as you can see, I'm standing basically inside a tiny house that is called Pfahlhaus in German. This building was built in 1767, so it is over 200 years old, and it is the oldest building in this neighborhood, which is absolutely incredible. And it has been restored by the owner himself and renovated, but the impact or the goal of the renovation was not to create something new, but to really enhance and keep and respect the old history of this unique place and just respect the charm of one of the smallest single standing houses in Hamburg. We are on the outside in front of the building, and it used to be all of the color was coming off and you could see the bare wall, and it was very wet because it hadn't been maintained very well for some time. Each of the stories has around 33 square meters, so it isn't too big. But you can really get an idea of how space can be used to have the maximum of life quality in a tight space like this. What I already love from the outside is that the building is framed by a lot of green windows that are painted in this beautiful dark green color. Follow me and let's go inside. So as we come inside, we are directly in the kitchen. And you can see that everything here in this room and everything in this apartment is kept to really respect the old history and to just keep this old charm. Over here we have a very small stove that is convenient if you want to cook something small. This apartment only really has 2 rooms without doors, so you could basically call it a loft, only that the loft is situated in a really small ancient building. And we have an open shelf where you can see all of the cutlery and all the dishes. So as you enter, you immediately get a feeling of this farm vibe. And we can see that all of the furniture that has been placed inside this apartment also speaks to the 200-year-old history of this apartment and of this chalet. So the owner didn't decide to add IKEA furniture, but instead he opted for a used farmer table. Or also, if we have a look at the chair, you can see that it has all of these scratches and it looks really worn. That really is the purpose, to use furniture that underline the story and the history of this place. As soon as you enter, you have this very romanticized way of life, and I really like that. I love the roses, and you can see that the roses as a vase, the owner didn't decide to use a normal vase, but instead he put it in a really old vintage milk jar, I believe that's what it's called. So you have yet again another piece of history. The history of this place has been told and respected in a lot of different ways. One of the ways that was respected is in the color palette. The fact that not a lot of modern colors were added, but that the designer really just struck to a very old and historic color palette using just whites, beiges, browns, and just the colors of natural materials and the materials that were also used 200 years ago. So that's really nice. The incredible thing about this historic chalet is the fact that in 1767, when it was built, it was the only house that was standing, and around it there was just a lot of green grass. And it is located in a street that is called the Market Street, Marktstraße in German. This street in Hamburg used to be the street where the farmers would bring their cattle and basically deal with their cattle and sell their cows, buy cows. And the renovation and the design of this place really speaks to this 200-year-old history. So if we have a look around, the living room is kept in very basic, very muted colors, and all of them are very earthy and really natural. There wasn't a new style added to the chalet, but instead everything was kept the way it was and was tried to be enhanced. So I love it. We can see all of these wooden beams that are exposed and laid bare. They give the room a very structural aspect. And then again, we have all of these beautiful brick walls that are original from the 18th century. We have all of this beautifully exposed brick, and you can just see that every single stone looks completely different. We assume that this used to be a chimney that went where the ventilation basically went up like that and went through the other stories. We can see that the apartment is framed by a lot of beautiful windows that are all the same, and they're actually Danish windows because, as I showed you, you don't open them to the inside, but you actually open them to the outside. This is like a much more space-saving solution to open them to the outside, and then you can just let the nature and the outside flow in. Because we have so many windows, not just on one wall, but on a lot of walls, you have a lot of life and a lot of movement in this beautiful room and in this beautiful chalet. We can see that we just have a beautiful composition over here. 2 windows that frame the wall behind me symmetrically, and just this little seating area where you can sit down here and have a cup of tea. And even though it's a very small gesture and you don't have a giant sofa area or lounge area, this is more than enough, and it's very appropriate and very nice for this space. And also here you can see that every piece of furniture that was added is bold and has a lot of history. These beautiful wooden chairs, they're upholstered in red fabric. The side table is from Persia, and on top of them we have again beautiful flowers that are placed. Over here we have a fireplace, and it is not legal anymore to have real fireplaces here, so it's an artificial fireplace that has been used. But you can see that to underline the history of this place, we have a very old historic beautiful lamp or a beautiful old radio, and again a lot of flowers, and this just creates a very romantic atmosphere that I love. Another thing that I think has been done really well here is the fact that we have so many different sources of light. So of course, on the one hand, we have all of the natural light coming from the outside, but at the same time, the owner didn't shy away from just placing a lot of lamps on the ceiling, but also have a lot of freestanding lamps. This just creates a very dynamic and earthy and heartwarming, warm atmosphere. So as soon as you come in, you feel like this place is really alive. A perfect combination to create a really warm and alive atmosphere is to have a lot of different sources of light and to have natural elements such as plants or flowers, mostly flowers. The wall separates the living space from the bedroom, so come with me behind the wall. And even though the two spaces aren't separated from each other and you have a really open, free-flowing layout, visually in your mind, the spaces act as two separate spaces, even though we just have half a wall that goes inside the room. So you don't always need very bold solutions, but sometimes just hinting and visually separating a space is already more than enough. This is the master bedroom, and it is just a dream of a historic bedroom. We're just kind of hugged by all of the exposed brick that adds a very natural and warm and earthy atmosphere. And you feel like this is just from some farm-side fairy tale, because everything feels so natural and you just have all of these old, raw and natural materials, and you can just feel the raw energy of the brick when you're sleeping here, and you get to wake up looking at a window and looking outside into nature and enjoying the view. And it's very simple yet very profound design. And to fully tell the history of this beautiful place, you have again a really old vintage farmside table made from wood. So all of the materials that are used here are very old, very rich, and always have a very warm patina. And that's what just gives this place such a profound feeling. Or we have this beautiful lamp that has like the shape of an oil lamp, of these former old oil lamps. And it just adds again a nice pop of color, but it doesn't destroy the story that is being told. The wall behind the bed is framed by a painting. I believe it's of a child that is hugging her teddy bear. And on the other side, we have a tiny micro wardrobe. In the chalet, we have a lot of attention to detail, such as the window shields that are made from wood. And you can see that they extend to give them a little bit more of a visual presence. These are just really small details and that make or break a design. Now we will go inside the bathroom. We have a beautiful door that separates the bathroom from the kitchen. The bathroom is very modern, it has been renovated. Just to give it a very small reference to the old history of the place, these small blue and green tiles were added because you need to know how to deal with an old building like this. The owner decided to add a lot of instructions. Or over here, another element that is very small yet thoughtful is that the copper pipes where the water runs are laid bare, and we have 4 copper pipes that go down from the ceiling all the way to the bottom. Come with me. And one thing I recently learned about windows that I think is very fascinating and interesting is the fact that before, historically, windows used to be the most expensive part of the house. And that's why historically the windows were always very small, and you always had like 4 of them or even 8 or 16 of them to make up a big window. And even here we can also see that instead of having 1 large window, you have 4 small windows. So another really fascinating fact about this piece of architecture is the fact that the lower story actually used to be a ticket office for Hapag-Lloyd, and people, like poor people from Hamburg, used to come here to buy tickets to go to the USA. After this place being a ticket store, it was used as a lot of different stores. This is basically like the store window front and the shield where you would always have like the name of the store being in the inside. Unfortunately, the original sign was destroyed. Another really cool thing is the fact that the owners planted bamboo right next to the building 15 years ago. And today you just have this gigantic jungle atmosphere, and you just have all of this bamboo coming out here. These are like the rings of the sewage system. You can comment below if you know what it's called. And they were used as gigantic vases for these trees. This is another really nice lounge area and just outside terrace area where you can sit, enjoy your coffee. You again have this vintage ceramics that are used. It says sugar in Germany, Zucker, and Krütze, which is like historic, something like jam. Now we looked at a beautiful 33 square meter apartment in a very old building in Hamburg. Hi guys, welcome to Interior Insights. I'm Jane, and we are standing in Verona in a beautiful luxury hotel called Vista, and we are in one of their beautiful suites. If you love beautiful Italian design and just eclectic, rich colors, this video is for you. If you haven't subscribed yet, please make sure to subscribe. Verona is a small city in Italy which has multiple layers of architecture from its 2,000-year-old history, such as the Roman architecture or the Gothic architecture. And we are standing in a beautiful, tiny luxury hotel that has 16 bedrooms. The building is very small and very vertical, so you have 6 floors that go up and 1 floor at the bottom that hosts a beautiful spa that I will show you later. So as we enter the beautiful suite, we are already standing in the living room and the dining room area. So the special thing about this hotel is the fact that the outsides are very old-fashioned and rustic, and you just have this historic shell of an old 19th century building, while the inside has been completely renovated in 2022. And this is why you just have this like clash of old and new on the outside and the inside. And I think it has just been masterfully done. As you come in, you still feel the historic spirit and all of the incredible history of Verona. We have a very symmetrical room layout. Right now we're standing in the living room. So over here we have a sofa situation. Come with me. We have a sofa that is also in this rough dark purple texture. And we can see that what is unique about this room is not only its history and its location, but also the beautiful, beautiful color palette that has been used. And that's what I think is unique. Most of the famous designer brands, whether if it's cars, luxury bags, or just historic architects, come from Italy. So the Italians have like a deep and rich design history. And this building pulls from the history. So here we have bold and eclectic colors, and we have these orange dark tapestry that covers the walls, and everything feels old, beautiful, rich in its history. And a lot of the color inspiration, the interior designer and architect of this place is called Maurizio Maggi, and he's actually from Milan. He really created a mix of the old 1920s Art Deco with the 1850s, like more of a glamour style. And all of the colors that have been used here refer to Gio Ponti, a famous architect and designer. And you just have these beautiful and rich and deep muted tones that really just stand for the Italian elegance and sophistication. If we go over here, we can see that everything in this room is very symmetric, and we can just walk through it. And the one room seamlessly flows into the next room. So behind me is the bedroom, and the wall that separates the living room from the bedroom in this suite has an integrated bookshelf that really like frames the wall behind me. We have light that masterfully really accents and highlights the design items that are being shown in the cupboard, and I think that that is really beautiful. So here we have all of these lights that create like a lively situation inside the apartment. And here we actually see a lot of elements that really tell the story of Italy. So here we have a book about Lamborghini cars, or here up here we have a book about the history of Versace. And we just really see that you have not just one layer, but really a multitude of layers that tell the story of the place. And other than that, we just have a lot of beautiful vases added as accents, and it's like organic, loose shapes that brighten up and loosen up the design. And what I love about this place is that you just have these beautiful, geometrically structured places. If we have a look at the ceiling, we can see that you still have these old beams. Historically, they would have been the wooden beams, but they look like they're covered in some sort of linen fabric. So you still have like a modern contemporary interpretation of the old style. And that is what I think is really unique. If we have a look outside the window, we can see the beautiful color of Verona. And this is what I always say, that whatever is outside of your window affects your design your design choices and the design on the inside. So over here we have this beautiful old Italian terracotta wall, and you can see that now the story in this suite actually makes sense. And you just really see that the terracotta wall on the outside of the building has been referenced and interpreted in a more modern approach. On the floor we have just old wood that really grounds you and gives you a feeling that it's been here forever. And now we will go inside the master bedroom. So even though this suite isn't gigantic, it boasts a very generous and really sophisticated and grand design. Behind me we have the master bed. You can see that it is gigantic, and we have this beautiful overthrow that adds another piece of texture and just another shade of beige. In general, the overall color palette is very warm, very muted, rich and earthy colors so that you can relax and calm down. And the reason why this suite feels so substantial is that they really use the structure to create the space and to create the zone. So if we just look at the wall that is behind the bed, we can see that we have all of these different frames inside frames and all of these different structures. So we have the white wainscoting that really frames the terracotta linen wall, and then we have the headboard that, it's not a headboard, but really it's a piece of art with all of these like geometric forms that open up the space and take away of its formality. Next to the headboard, we have again 2 sconces that are mounted on the wall that have the same geometry as the shapes on the headboard, and because of this it feels purposefully designed, and the story is told not just in one place but really in a lot of places, and everything feels really coherent and beautiful. We have 2 windows that beautifully frame the other side and that let you see the beauty of Verona. They are framed by really rich and heavy curtains and another pair of lighter curtains, and just to give them even more of a weight and a presence inside the room, they are not only this light gray, but a big strip of dark brown has been added so that they visually frame the room even more and give them even more of a presence. Over here we have a beautiful sconce that just gives you really ambient light, and it just is this like swirly design lamp that just stands freely and really illuminates this place. What I really love about these luxury hotels is that the lighting in the rooms is always made to make you feel really comfortable and to create a beautiful atmosphere that you can immerse yourself in. And this is something that I feel that often lacks in private homes, because in private homes you wouldn't just add sconces here and ambient lights there and indirect light here. And I feel like this is always a simple trick that can elevate your design. Over here we have a small table and a dark purple velvet chair as a little writing area. And another element that really takes inspiration from the history of Verona is the beautiful window shields. Let me show you. So a cool fact about Verona is that all of the streets are clad in pinkish marble, and that just gives you an absolutely incredible feeling when you walk through Verona. And here we can see the same marble imitated again to just take the history and integrate it into your design. Over here we have a walk-in closet that just makes your stay even more comfortable. As I told you before, the layout of this suite is very symmetrical, and you can just walk through the center from one room into the next. And now we will go inside the master bathroom that really again extends symmetrically. This bathroom is an eye-catcher by itself because we just have this absolutely beautiful dark green marble with a lot of strong veining. And the gigantic sink looks like it's just been carved out of a giant slab of marble, when in fact it actually consists of a few smaller pieces. And you just come in and you enter and you just have a perfect symmetrical composition. And the marble was even not just kept to the sink itself, but it actually extends as the floor as well. So this actually even just creates an even bigger statement as you come inside this piece. And this is without a doubt the focal point in this room. The rest of the master bathroom is clad in whiter marble. And we just have a really spacious design, a beautiful round bathtub that is white. Over here we have a toilet hiding, and here we have a shower hiding, and this bathroom really just finishes the tale of the story of living in former Italy. Now we are in the lower part of the Hotel Vista, and we're in the spa area, and you can just see how beautiful it is. You feel like you were just transported back in time to one of these Roman thermal spas and these thermal old springs. And they really managed to create this beautiful, unique, and very natural feeling atmosphere because of this beautiful wall. Here we have a lot of different slabs of stone, and you have like a waterfall coming down the stones. You have blue lights inside the swimming pool that just give it this turquoise, bright blue atmosphere. There's a fresco that imitates, I believe actually it's Romeo and Juliet, that are like standing under the moonlight. Yes, because we're in Verona, this is the city of Romeo and Juliet. So this is the foyer and entrance area. We have a lot of very muted colors, and you can see that the structure of the building is kept in this dark, almost blackish wood that has like a very shiny and liquor patina. So you feel this really like old history and the old atmosphere of the building. And to complement these dark straight angles and the structure, you have these loosely and really just organically shaped furniture placements in lounge areas. And over here we can see that we have yet again these really dark colors that reference Geoponti, and you have this burgundy dark red sofa and the upholstery, or in this again this shiny liquor sofa table. All of the colors are really muted, dark. You don't have too much light, so it's a very intimate atmosphere, and that's also something that the hotel, because it's so small, is trying to keep. We have a beautiful artwork with 2 floral plants, and this theme of the florals is used yet again over here in these beautiful vases, and we just have a lot of different layers of these florals being used. And because we don't have too much light here, and we just have these like little ambient indirect lightnings, or just these like touches and accents of light, you have all of these shiny materials that really just add a lot of reflections and give you a sense that the room really is living and breathing all of the light. Over here we will go now into a more private area. You can see that the door just beautifully frames the wall, and it goes all the way to the top just to create this really grand entrance feeling. And we have these beautiful door handles that remind you again of like this crystal glass and of the former times of Italy. And here we can see that it gets even more intimate because we feel like we're really like in a small cabinet where intimate meetings are held, and we have all of these different layers of dark colors. So here again we have this like beautiful indigo velvety blue upholstery, or this like shiny burgundy red table. Also, a really cool trick that was added, that you almost feel like you're kind of in a mirrored cabinet inside here, because the walls are actually clad in mirror. And because of this, you don't really understand how big the dimensions of the space are. And my favorite part of this room, of course, is the beautiful old ceiling. You just have a lot of carved pieces of wood that are integrated like a puzzle. So today we looked at a very exquisite, intimate and small hotel named Hotel Vista, and we really saw just this beautiful mix of muted colors and respecting the old architecture while creating a modern masterpiece inside the design. Thank you. Today we are going to look at an amazing historical apartment of a lady that traveled all over the world to collect her furniture. This building is set in Hamburg and was built in 1896, which means that this apartment is over 100 years old. And you can really see this in the ceiling height, as well as in the beautiful molding that is still original and has been completely restored by the owner herself. And this is just really incredible. We enter right into the living room, and you can see that as soon as you enter, you feel right at home, and it is a really beautiful, almost magical place. And I think one of the reasons why it feels like this is because there's windows in all directions, and the windows kind of structure and frame a room that is otherwise a little bit wild and that has a lot of different elements in it. And at the same time, the furniture in the room doesn't overwhelm the space, but really you have one central furniture arrangement in the center, and there's a lot of space around all of the sides. And because of this, I think the room feels really harmonious and has a really nice structure. Of course, the white carpet really frames the living room and gives it another layer of comfort. The color palette in this room, if we have a closer look, it is kept from white to browns and beiges all the way up to red. So there's really like a lot of very warm colors have been used, and they really contrast all of the green nature outside. And what I really, really love about this place is that every Every single thing that you see here has an incredible story and is basically from another continent. So basically, this beautiful chandelier that we talked about before is from Mallorca, while this amazing bright red colored shelf is from China. So you can really see that if you try to design a place, you don't just have to go with like pick one theme and just really stick to it, but your design can get really unique and tell like your whole personal history. And what I think is really amazing about this apartment is the fact that it really tells the history and basically the complete life of the owner, because wherever she was traveling, she would always take something home. Because of this, every year by year, the home reflected more of who she was and her personality. I think this is really cool. These chairs were found in the streets of Hamburg, where this apartment lives. But for example, these chairs were found in Bali while the owner was living in Jimbaran. This beautiful printed blanket, for example, was found in Flores. You can't even begin to imagine where all of these beautiful elements came from. And this table, for example, is an antique from Syria. One of my favorite elements in this entire apartment are, without a doubt, definitely these beautiful lamps, because they just have a really nice sculptural structure. And I believe that they were found somewhere in Africa. And you can see that both of them are placed symmetrically to the window. And this is a really cool trick to add like harmony and a sense of purpose in your design, is by just creating symmetry, even just not throughout the entire room, but just in small certain settings. At the same time, the design is kind of elevated because you don't have the same lampshades, but you have the same color lampshades, but in different shapes. And this kind of really creates like an unexpected situation. And I think that's what good design is all about. And of course, to pull the nature in, these beautiful vintage, old-fashioned floral curtains have been installed, and like really traditional. They are held together by these strings, and this is really like a heritage and a connection to the historical origin of this beautiful apartment. I would describe the overall style as a mix of classic and colonial elements, because really every single piece of furniture and piece of art here was sourced over the whole world. That's really cool. And also here we have a small seating area that's just really comfy and fun. And you can just really get lost in every single detail. Now we will go into the dining room. This is the more casual living room. And over there, we will go into the more formal dining room. It is connected, like all old buildings are, by gigantic big doors. And I think I've never actually seen doors that are this high. It's very beautiful. And here again, you see that the flow between one room to the next isn't interrupted, but that there's a lot of space, and the scenery that was created in the center of the room is repeated again here. Here we just have a beautiful casual table and 4 quite minimalistic chairs in comparison to everything else, and you can just really see that sometimes a little quiet moment is better, and not creating a lot of different maximalist moments in every single situation, but like you want to mix it up and have like here a really grand gesture, and here's something more quiet and pared down so that your guests can also relax. And of course, because the table and the lampshades are like really pared down and white and minimalistic, a bright orange vase was added with just gorgeous lavender colored flowers. And this just adds a really cool and unique color palette. Oh, and over here we have Daisy. She is also part of this apartment. Hello, Daisy. She belongs to the design. You can see that her colors integrate perfectly into the design. And over here we have a bookshelf. The bookshelf just really structures and frames the side of the window and is more modern than the rest of the apartment, I would say. Oh, and if we have a look over here, we can see a really beautiful vintage mirror. I wonder where it came from. It's really unique. And of course, you have orchids or like flowers, greens, and like really floral elements to really brighten up the space and add some more life and some more lighthearted and soft elements to give it some more femininity. This is another thing I really like about this apartment, the fact that just everywhere you look in every direction you have a lot of flowers. That's just really beautiful. Now let's go into the bedrooms. So basically each of the bedrooms has their own name, and with the name comes a whole personal design based on the name. You feel like this is a little room in a castle. It's really beautiful. and everything really is very historic and antique, and you feel like you're living not now, but really like 100, 150 years old. Everything really speaks to the story. The bright yellow color is quite harmonious with these dark brown wardrobes that are really vintage and antique. And here you can see like floral, little flowers, little floral elements that make me suspect that this is also like from the period of Art Nouveau, which is very cool. And the floral elements are again repeated in the curtains. So this really creates a coherent design story. Other than that, you have like a very minimalistic but nice bed. The coolest thing, of course, is the view that you are just looking at beautiful classicistic buildings, and because you're on the second floor, you just really have this majestic view. And of course, outside we have a beautiful balcony that is also in the style of Art Nouveau. I believe this whole building is. And that just really finishes the story to the end. Here we go. You see, the metal frame of the balcony also has all of these floral shapes, as does the table. And over here you can see the beautiful view that you get to marvel at during your stay. Guess the name? You're right, it's Picasso. I think this is my favorite room by far, because I mean, for one, it's easier to make a more beautiful room if you just have more space, but I think the color palette here is more nuanced than the other rooms. If we have a closer look, you again have this beautiful sandy yellow color, but the color, the monochromatic or like kind of faded out color style is really broken up by these bright green mint chairs, and I love it. That's really, really cool. I think without these chairs, the design would feel like it lacks something, or like it kind of had fallen asleep, because you have all of this like vintage furniture that is very old and beautiful and has a lot of history. But these chairs just really add like an unexpected element to it. And I think this is really something we can learn from this beautiful apartment, that creating little elements of unexpected design, as Kelly Worcester says, is the way to go. And of course, here we have the painting of why it's called Van Gogh. I don't think I need to explain that. And a funny story actually about these beautiful crystal chandeliers, sconces, I don't know what to call them, that are mounted symmetrically to the wall, were actually found in Vienna. And the owner, the woman, she actually found them online, and yeah, it's the end of the story. Yeah, basically these chandeliers cost 20 euros, but you had to pick them up, and she offered the Austrian guys 120 euros if they ship it to Germany, and they did. And it was a success story. And we can try to turn it on, have a look at the light. Ooh, beautiful. Some people don't like these types of chandeliers because they feel like you are looking directly at the light bulb, and the light bulb isn't exposed. Like, it is exposed, but I think it's quite beautiful. You just need to be careful that you don't look inside the light directly, which I did. And here we have another unexpected element, that a tray was used as a bedside table. And I think this really creates a unique experience and a unique stay that you will remember forever. Another really cool and interesting and unique story about this painting is that this painting was bought like 20 years ago or something, and at some reason, like completely separated from the fact that it was bought somewhere, a woman stayed here, and when she came inside this room, she was like, "Oh, I painted this." So basically, without any connection, the owner decided to spend a night here. And the painting and the painter met yet again. So this kitchen dates back to when this apartment was built in 1896, and the tiles, the blue and white tiles, are still original and are still from this time. And I think that that's just incredible, the fact that they've survived all of this time. And the coolest thing about this kitchen is right next to me. Woo! So this is basically the light switch, and I think this is quite cool. The kitchen is really the heart of the home, as in every home. You can really see this because here all of the like beautiful, like representative seating areas and everything are completely gone. But here you really just have a simple kitchen. You have the necessities, what you need, so that every guest who comes here can just make himself a coffee. And you feel right at home, and you don't have this like fear that the place is too beautiful or too perfect and that you're not allowed to touch it. And another small seating area where you can like get to drink your coffee in the morning. Sit, have a nice time. I hope you liked the video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe now, and see you next week.